Hey there, welcome to the heart of Texas Hill Country. We're here in Burnet. We're at Spider Mountain Lift Access Bike Park. We're ripping some laps to do the next bike overview. And this time, this one's traveled a long way. It's the Devinci Troy. Let's go see what it's about. Time for the first bike review of 2020, this one. As we said, it's the Devinci Troy. So first question is, why the Troy? A couple different reasons. First is, it is a damn good looking bike. And I've seen a few of them around here. I approached Drew Kolb from Revolution Mobile Bike Repair and I said, dude, I think I need one of those. Part of the reason was split pivot. So having been on DW Link bikes for a long time, I was really intrigued by the split pivot, had never ridden one, and thought both Dave Wago designs, I really want to give it a try. The way it separates braking forces and pedaling input forces, I thought was really cool. So it sounded great on paper and I thought, let's put it to the test. The other reason is this is a 140 rear, 160 front bike, 29-inch wheels. It's like the bike right now. It's the space. So there's a ton of bikes to choose from in this space. And I just think, especially for me, it pretty much covers the entire range of capability. So what do we have with this particular bike? This one is what they call the X01 LTD build. So it's kind of unique because it has an X01 derailleur, but GX everything else. So performance wise, it's been pretty good. I haven't had any issues with it so far. I'm very comfortable with GX, X01 with SRAM drivetrains just across the board. The majority of my recent bikes have been that. In addition to that, the Code RSC brakes, very different for me. I have been an XT brake guy for going on probably 3 years now. And it's funny because everybody talks about XTs don't have modulation and the SRAMs have a ton of modulation. I can stop fine with XT brakes. I raced the entire BME with 2-piston XTs and 180 rotors, and it was awesome. Now, I can tell you these Code RSCs with 200 millimeter rotors, I think I'll stop on a dime and give you 9 cents change. They are awesome. I'm really been impressed. I think the 200 millimeter rotor is definitely making a difference for me. I'm used to having to maximize the 180 mils, so the 200 really makes it fun. So when I was out just destroying Spider Mountain on this thing, I was happy to have those brakes because I could drive it in really deep. Next part of this package is the Rockshox suspension. So you got a Lyric Ultimate up front and you have the Super Deluxe Ultimate in the rear. So let me just kind of give you some context, set the stage. For probably 3 years now, I have been mostly on Fox suspension. So the bikes I was getting would come spec'd with Fox product. I hopped on this bike, cruised to downtown Bentonville and hit the top of All-American. It's a trail I've hit thousands and thousands of times. And about probably 3 minutes into that ride, I stopped and I called Rob and I said, dude, is it possible that the Rockshox suspension feels that much different on this bike? And his answer was yes. So am I saying Rockshox is better than Fox? That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I can tell you from my experience is that I hopped on this bike and it felt absolutely incredible. It felt very different than anything I'd ridden before. And I'm gonna attribute a lot of that to the way the Rockshox works. So the Lyric and the Super Deluxe Ultimate, I just think they're very different than the Fox product. And for me, it feels really cool. So that was something that I got fired up with. And the more I rode it, the more I liked that. So we got to Spider Mountain. That was the main test bed for this bike. And like I said before, I'd never been to Spider. So I went for it, kind of reckless abandon. And the harder I rode this bike, the better it felt. And so my initial impression when I got on it is it's big. It is a very big bike. I'm 5'10". The majority of my pivots that I've been on were larges. Wheelbase on this bike, 1,215 millimeters. So let's compare that to the previous generation Switchblade. This is about 25 millimeters longer. So on paper, doesn't sound like a whole lot, but in actuality, when you're riding the bike, it is longer. I noticed that, but it also feels bigger and more capable. I don't know what to attribute that to. Is it the linkage design in the back? Is it that Super Deluxe and the Lyric Ultimate up front? I don't know. But what I can say is this thing's 140, 160. It felt just as capable as the Firebird that I was on last year. So it's pretty crazy because with that, I took some time to cruise around Spider Mountain, pedal around the perimeter, pedal up and down a couple times, and this thing actually pedaled really well. The platform is really good, as you would expect with a Dave Wagle design. But coming back to length and how the bike feels, riding at the top of All-American, one of the things I noticed was I felt like I was going faster than I ever have. But what was happening was I was arriving in space a little bit early. So it kind of felt awkward and I had to slowly make some adjustments. So that's what I'm dealing with on this bike is I'm making some adjustments in my riding style to try to maximize what this bike brings. Incredible capability, very confidence inspiring, but at the same time, if you're comfortable riding it hard, it just seems to keep giving back to you over and over again. So the stock setup as far as wheels go, it's the Raceface Arc 35 with the Vault hubs. It's been really good. I've been pretty impressed with it. Again, we're keeping all these bikes stock when we do these reviews. So the 35 millimeter width, I think is pretty good because it helps the tires splay out pretty well. So tire choice up front, you get a standard 2.5 Maxxis Minion DHF. All right, so out back, it's gonna be a 2.4 Minion DHR. So I am not the biggest fan of the DHR. I would prefer to run DHS both front and rear. But again, what I can say is all the time we spent at Spider Mountain, I was pretty impressed with it. It worked pretty well. Now, one caveat here that I've noticed. Looking at clearance in the back, clearance is fairly tight. So I think it comes spec'd with a 2.4 because running a 2.5 might get a little bit tight, especially if you're riding in muddy conditions. So I certainly don't see that necessarily as a drawback. For me, I'd be okay running a 2.4. And what I can say is moving forward with this bike, of course, we're gonna add cush core in, and I think that'll make a 2.4 perform even better. All right, so Cockpit. Comes standard with the Raceface Next R carbon bar, 20 mil rise, 800 mil width, cut mine down to 760. And then it has the turbine stem. So here's where it gets a little unique. This thing comes spec'd with a 50 mil stem. So the first change I'm gonna make is shorten this thing up. I'm gonna drop down to 40, maybe even 35, and see if that makes it feel a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit more maneuverable, but still allow me to get over the front as much as possible. Head tube angle on this, 66 degrees, which I was shocked when I rode it because it feels steeper than 66 degrees. So it's crazy. I don't know if that's maybe a seat tube angle thing. It's tough to say, but you definitely get a lot of high speed stability, but it's still pretty nimble when you're trying to maneuver and climb up things. All right, so one other super rad thing about this bike and this frame design is this right here. Boom, Rockshox reverb dropper, 175 millimeters. So I've been used to 150, and 150 is kind of tough for me because if you're getting super rowdy, I'd have to drop the thing down a little bit lower, and it just never seemed to go high enough for a long transfer or like a cross-country type ride. So this is cool because now I can strike the balance of both, and it's been working really well. I've been on Fox transfers for a long time and heard a lot of things about the Rockshox reverb, but this version of the reverb has performed flawlessly for me. All right, so what's next with Achilles? Like I said, we're gonna drop the stem length a little bit. I'm gonna shorten this thing up, see how it feels. Other than that, probably gonna do a little wheel swap, obviously throw the cush core in. That's one thing that was kind of interesting. It was really fun to ride, but I think having a cush core in will make a little bit of a difference. You get very acclimated to that. Then on top of that, we're gonna play with the suspension a little bit. So very excited to have a Rockshox tech expert come out. Jason Blodgett's gonna join us pretty soon, and what we're gonna do is basically go through an entire suspension setup using this bike. So we'll start with the baseline, we'll set it up, we'll go out, do some testing, come back, make some adjustments, and kind of walk through that. So I'm excited about Rockshox new product called Magneg, and that's something that we're gonna add into this. I hardly know anything about it, but we're gonna rely on some experts. So I think from here, it's gonna just be more fine tuning and spending more time on this bike. Spider Mountain was a blast. It handled every bit of that place, and I had a lot of fun. I've been spending some time around here on my home trails in Arkansas, and it's pretty crazy how well this thing performs, giving me a very back-to-back comparison. So other than that, we're just excited to start adding to our fleet of reviews. So stay tuned, check the text down below. We'll put all the particulars down there, give you all the important links. Make sure to subscribe, hit that bell to get notified of all the good stuff we have coming, and keep your eyes peeled. We got more Ride Series events coming to a town near you. We're gonna do some really cool Oz Trails experiences, and then also just stay in touch with what we're doing on Instagram. Very soon we got the Sedona Mountain Bike Festival and a few other things. So with that, I wanna thank my friends up north from Canada and say, you make a good bike, eh? We'll see you next time.